"Ma'am, you need to leave now. The water is still rising." The firefighter's voice cut through the pounding rain as I stood ankle-deep in muddy water inside what had been my living room. My couch had tipped sideways. Family photographs floated near the stairs. Somewhere behind me, my 8-year-old son, Noah, was trying to keep his little sister calm. "Mom, are we going to lose everything?" Lily asked. I swallowed hard. "Just grab your backpack, sweetheart. We have to go." 20 minutes later, I pushed 2 soaked bags into my aging SUV and helped the children into the back seat. The emergency shelter was already full. Every hotel within driving distance had been booked by other families fleeing the flood. That left one number I had promised myself I wouldn't call unless I had no other choice. My mother answered after 4 rings. "Mom, the house flooded," I said. "They evacuated us. Can the kids and I stay with you tonight?" There was a pause. Then she sighed. "Natalie, Emily, and her children are already here. There's no room for you." I stared through the windshield. My parents lived in a large 2-story house. "We can sleep on the living room floor," I whispered. "It's only for one night." My father's voice came through the phone. "Figure something out." The call ended. For the next 3 hours, I drove through the rain, stopping at hotels, churches, and emergency centers. Every answer was the same. No vacancies. No beds. No space. By midnight, Noah and Lily were asleep in the back seat beneath 2 damp blankets. I parked under a streetlight outside a closed grocery store and locked the doors. I pressed both hands against the steering wheel, trying to cry silently so I wouldn't wake them. I had paid my parents' medical bills. I had repaired their house. I had canceled plans whenever they needed help. But when my children needed one dry room, they had turned us away. A sudden knock struck the driver's window. I gasped and looked up. Grandma Eleanor stood outside in the rain, holding an umbrella. Her eyes moved past me to the children curled together in the back seat. Then she looked directly at me. "Your parents know you're out here?" Grandma didn't wait for an explanation. "Start the car," she said. "You're following me home." "Grandma, it's almost midnight. I don't want to put you through this." She leaned closer to the window. "Natalie, your children are sleeping in a car. This is not the moment to worry about inconveniencing me." 20 minutes later, I carried Lily into Grandma's farmhouse while Noah stumbled beside me, half asleep. Grandma turned on the heat, found dry pajamas in an old dresser, and made hot chocolate even though neither child could keep their eyes open. Once they were tucked into the guest room, she sat across from me at the kitchen table. "Tell me exactly what happened." I stared into my untouched mug. "Mom said Emily and her kids were staying there. Dad told me to figure something out." Grandma's jaw tightened. "And you believed there was no room?" "I didn't have a reason not to." She watched me carefully. "This is not the first time they've chosen Emily, is it?" I hesitated, then the truth started coming out. I told her about paying part of Dad's hospital bill the previous year, about replacing their broken water heater, about watching their house and feeding their dog whenever they traveled. I had never asked them to repay me. "They're still my parents," I said. "Maybe tonight was just bad timing." Grandma folded her hands on the table. "Natalie, how many times have they asked Emily to do those things?" I couldn't answer. She stood, walked to the hallway cabinet, and pulled out a spare key attached to a familiar brass tag. It was the key to my parents' house. Then she looked at me and said quietly, "Would you believe me if I told you they had 3 empty bedrooms?" The next morning, Grandma knocked gently on the guest room door. "Get the kids dressed," she said. "We're going for a drive." I frowned. "Where?" "To your parents' house." My stomach tightened. "I don't want another fight." "You're not starting one," she replied calmly. "You're simply coming with me." By the time we arrived, several relatives were already outside. The recent flooding had damaged more than our neighborhood, and everyone had gathered to help clear fallen branches and stack ruined furniture along the curb. The moment my mother saw us step out of Grandma's truck, her smile disappeared. "Natalie," she called loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "I was so worried about you. I kept telling your father you should have stayed here, but you insisted on doing things your own way." Several heads turned toward me. One of my cousins looked confused. You didn't stay here? Before I could answer, my mother sighed dramatically. She said she'd rather keep her independence than crowd the house. You know how stubborn she is. A few relatives nodded sympathetically toward her. I felt the air leave my lungs. She wasn't just denying what happened. She was rewriting it. Natalie? Grandma asked softly. I looked at her. She gave one small nod. Without saying another word, Grandma walked past everyone and unlocked the front door with the brass key she had shown me the night before. My parents froze. Mom, my father said sharply, what are you doing? Grandma ignored him. She opened the first guest bedroom. The bed was perfectly made. No luggage, no toys, no one inside. She crossed the hall and opened the second bedroom. Empty. Then the third. Also empty. Every relative standing in the hallway could see inside. The silence was so complete, I could hear rain dripping from the porch roof outside. My mother hurried forward. We were saving those rooms. Grandma slowly turned toward her. Saving them? Yes. For whom? Mom hesitated. We just were. Grandma's eyes never left hers. Saved from your own daughter? No one spoke. My cousin slowly looked at me, then back at the 3 untouched bedrooms. Another aunt quietly whispered, She really slept in her car? My father cleared his throat. This isn't the place for family business. No, Grandma answered. The place for family business was yesterday, when your grandchildren needed somewhere dry to sleep. Neither of my parents had an answer. I stood there feeling something shift inside me. For years, I had questioned my own memory every time they favored Emily. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I expected too much. Maybe there had always been a reasonable explanation. Looking at those 3 empty bedrooms, every excuse I had ever made for them collapsed. This wasn't about space. It never had been. Grandma quietly locked the front door again and handed the house key back to my father. I'll see all of you next Saturday, she said. My mother blinked. What are you talking about? Grandma looked around at every relative gathered there. I'll be hosting dinner. One uncle smiled awkwardly. Well, that'll be nice. Grandma shook her head. No. Her voice was calm enough to make everyone uneasy. There's something everyone deserves to know. Without another word, she walked back toward her truck. I followed her, still trying to process what had just happened, while my parents remained standing on the porch, watching every member of the family leave with questions they could no longer answer. By Monday morning, the entire family seemed to know Grandma had called a meeting. No one knew why, but everyone knew it had something to do with what happened after the flood. My phone started ringing before I left Grandma's farmhouse. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, Dad called. Then another call. Then another. By lunchtime, there were 6 missed calls and 3 text messages. Dad. Call us immediately. Mom. Don't let your grandmother make this worse. Mom. You're tearing this family apart. I stared at the screen, unable to believe they still thought I was the problem. Grandma glanced at my phone while pouring coffee. You don't owe anyone an answer today. I've spent my whole life trying to explain myself to them. And where has that gotten you? I looked down. She already knew the answer. That afternoon, there was another knock at Grandma's front door. I expected one of my parents. Instead, it was Emily. She looked exhausted. I need to talk to Natalie. Grandma stepped aside without saying a word. Emily stood awkwardly in the living room before finally speaking. I didn't know. I crossed my arms. Didn't know what? That you slept in your car. I frowned. Mom told you we found a hotel. Emily nodded slowly. She said you called back an hour later and told them not to worry because you'd found somewhere to stay. I felt every muscle in my body tighten. I never called back. Emily's face fell. She told all of us you were comfortable. I let out a slow breath. For one night, Noah and Lily slept curled up in the back seat because our own parents wouldn't let us inside. Emily covered her mouth. I swear, Natalie, if I'd known, I believe you. She looked surprised. You do? Yes. Because for the first time, I realized something that had never occurred to me before. Mom and Dad hadn't just manipulated me. They had manipulated Emily, too. They had always fed each of us different stories, making sure neither daughter saw the full picture. Emily sat down heavily. I thought you kept your distance because you wanted to. And I thought you never cared enough to ask. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Years of misunderstanding suddenly made terrible sense. The following morning, Grandma disappeared into the attic. When she came back down, she was carrying 3 old storage boxes. Help me with these. Inside were neatly labeled folders stretching back more than a decade. Receipts, canceled checks, thank you notes, photographs, even birthday cards. I picked up one receipt. It showed a payment I'd made toward Dad's emergency surgery years earlier. Another folder contained invoices from the plumbing repairs I'd paid for at my parents' house after a frozen pipe burst. I forgot these even existed, I whispered. I didn't. Grandma carefully arranged every document across the dining room table. You never kept score. No. So I did. She opened another box. Inside were family photographs. There was one from Christmas. Emily and Mom decorating cookies. Dad smiling beside them. I wasn't in the picture. I remembered why. I had been outside clearing the driveway after a snowstorm because Dad's back was hurting. Another photo showed everyone celebrating Mom's birthday. I had been the one taking the picture after cooking the entire meal. There was another from Father's Day. I remembered leaving early because my washing machine had broken. Grandma quietly shook her head. You didn't leave early. What? You left because your father asked you to drive across town and pick up his prescription. I blinked. I forgot that. You forgot, Grandma said softly, because you've spent years convincing yourself these things weren't important. She reached into the final box. It contained handwritten notes, letters, holiday cards, small reminders she'd written to herself over the years. One note caught my eye. Natalie fixed Richard's roof today. Diane thanked Emily instead during dinner. Another read. Natalie missed her school award ceremony because Diane asked her to babysit Emily's children. There were dozens. Grandma had noticed everything. She simply hadn't realized how much worse it had become until she found my children sleeping in that SUV. Friday evening, just one day before the family dinner, another car pulled into Grandma's driveway. This time it was both of my parents. Dad got out first. Mom hurried behind him. Mother, she called before she even reached the porch. We need to talk. Grandma opened the front door, but didn't invite them inside. Dad forced a smile. This family meeting isn't necessary. No? Mom stepped forward. You're embarrassing all of us. Grandma remained perfectly calm. No, Diane. Yes, you are. You're making people think we're terrible parents. Grandma's eyes never left hers. People are beginning to think. Mom's confident expression faltered. Dad tried another approach. If Natalie has hurt feelings, we'll work it out privately. I almost laughed. After 32 years, they suddenly wanted privacy. Grandma folded her hands. For years, everything important was handled privately. She glanced toward me. So no one would know the truth. Mom's voice hardened. You're choosing one granddaughter over the rest of your family. Grandma answered without raising her own. No. She took one slow step forward. I'm choosing honesty over comfort. Dad's jaw tightened. You're going to destroy this family. Grandma looked at both of them for a long moment. Then she spoke the words that ended the conversation. I'm not embarrassing this family. She paused. I'm exposing what already happened inside it. Neither of my parents had a response. For the first time in my life, I watched them walk away without getting the last word. And as their car disappeared down the driveway, I realized there would be no stopping what was about to happen the following evening. Saturday evening, every chair around Grandma Eleanor's dining table was filled. Aunts, uncles, cousins, Emily sat quietly across from me, avoiding our parents' eyes. No one seemed interested in the meal Grandma had prepared. Everyone was waiting. Grandma remained standing. She didn't touch her plate. She didn't raise her voice. She simply looked around the room until every conversation stopped. "Before we eat," she said, "there's something this family needs to hear." My mother forced a nervous smile. "Can't this wait until after dinner?" "No." Grandma rested one hand on the back of her chair. "It has already waited too many years." The room became perfectly still. She looked at me first. "Natalie won't tell you these things herself because she believes protecting this family is more important than protecting herself." Then she turned to everyone else. "So I will." She picked up the first folder from the stack beside her. "This receipt is from 8 years ago." She held it up. "Natalie paid nearly $3,000 toward Richard's emergency medical expenses after insurance refused part of the claim." Several relatives immediately looked toward my father. He shifted uncomfortably. Grandma opened another folder. "This invoice shows Natalie paid to replace their water heater." Another. "Here's the roofing repair." Another. "Here's the plumbing repair." One by one, she laid the documents across the dining table. "I never loaned them the money," I said quietly. "I gave it because they needed help." Grandma nodded. "And did they ever tell any of you?" Silence. She answered for them. "They did not." She continued opening folders. "There are photographs of Natalie repainting their house." Another photograph. "Here she is cleaning storm debris after a hurricane." Another. "Here she's taking Richard to physical therapy 3 times a week." Every picture showed the same thing. Me working, helping, showing up. Grandma placed one final photograph in the center of the table. It wasn't flattering. It showed me standing in muddy boots outside my parents' garage, holding a ladder while my father pointed toward the roof. "I remember that day," one of my uncles whispered. "So do I," Grandma replied. "Richard thanked Emily during dinner that night." Dad lowered his eyes. No one defended him. Grandma wasn't finished. She reached for a small notebook. "I've kept notes over the years because I couldn't understand why one granddaughter was always expected to give while the other was always protected." She opened to one page. "Natalie missed her school's Teacher of the Year ceremony because Diane asked her to babysit Emily's children." She turned another page. "Natalie fixed Richard's roof. Diane thanked Emily in front of relatives." Another page. "Natalie bought groceries after Richard lost work. Family later told everyone Emily had stepped in." Emily covered her mouth. She stared at our parents. "You told people I did those things?" Mom tried to interrupt. "Emily, sweetheart." "No." Emily's voice cracked. "Answer me." Neither of them could. Grandma closed the notebook. "Now let's talk about last Monday." She looked directly at every person around the table. "After the flood destroyed Natalie's home, she called her parents asking for one night." Mom immediately spoke. "We thought she had somewhere else to." Grandma raised one hand. "You've spoken enough." The room fell silent again. "I found my great-grandchildren asleep in the back seat of an SUV beneath wet blankets." She paused. "They were sleeping in a grocery store parking lot." Several relatives gasped. Grandma's voice never changed. "I asked Natalie whether her parents knew where she was." She looked at my mother. "They did." No one moved. No one reached for food. My aunt slowly turned toward Mom. "You knew?" Mom's lips trembled. "It wasn't like that," Grandma answered before anyone else could. "It was exactly like that." She looked around the room. "The next morning, I unlocked their home." She let those words settle. There were 3 empty guest bedrooms. Every eye shifted to my parents. Dad rubbed both hands together. We were overwhelmed. "You were comfortable," Grandma corrected. "Natalie and 2 children were homeless." Emily suddenly pushed her chair back. The scrape echoed across the dining room. "You told me she had a hotel." Mom looked at her desperately. "I didn't want you worrying." Emily shook her head. "You lied to me." "I was trying to." You let my niece and nephew sleep in a car." Tears streamed down Emily's face. "I would have left my room if I'd known." "I know," I said softly. She turned toward me. "I'm so sorry." For the first time in years, I believed she meant it. Grandma reached beneath the table and picked up a sealed envelope. I had planned to announce this after my birthday. She looked at everyone. But life has a way of showing us what can't wait. She handed the envelope to my uncle, who carefully removed the papers inside. He looked down, then back up. His expression changed completely. "These are your revised estate documents." Grandma nodded. "I met with my attorney months ago." My father's face drained of color. "Mother, the farmhouse," Grandma continued, "along with the surrounding property, will belong to Natalie." The room went silent. "I've also established education funds for Noah and Lily." She folded her hands. "The remainder of my estate will be distributed according to these revised documents." Dad stood so quickly his chair tipped backward. "You're punishing us." Grandma looked at him with calm disappointment. "No." She shook her head. "I'm rewarding the person who never expected one." Mom's voice became desperate. "You can't do this because of one mistake." Grandma's eyes narrowed. "This wasn't one mistake." She gestured toward the documents spread across the table. "This was decades of choices." Nobody argued. There was nothing left to argue. Every receipt, every photograph, every handwritten note, every empty bedroom, every lie. Together they painted a picture none of them could erase. My mother looked at me. Natalie. It was the first time all evening she had said my name without frustration. "I'm sorry." I studied her face. For years I had imagined hearing those words. I thought they would heal something inside me. Instead, they felt strangely empty. "You aren't apologizing because you understand," I said quietly. "You're apologizing because everyone else understands." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. Grandma walked over and wrapped her arms around me. "You never lacked worth," she whispered. "They lacked gratitude." I finally let myself cry. Not because my parents had rejected me, but because someone had finally seen everything I had carried alone. The weeks that followed changed my life in ways I never expected. When neighbors heard that our house had flooded, volunteers from the community spent weekends helping us strip damaged walls, replace flooring, and rebuild what had been destroyed. Parents from my school organized fundraisers without me even asking. Teachers brought meals. Former students showed up carrying paintbrushes. People I barely knew gave my children more kindness than my own parents had shown in years. Emily visited often. She apologized again, not because she expected forgiveness, but because she wanted to earn back trust one honest conversation at a time. Slowly, we built the relationship our parents had spent years dividing. As for Mom and Dad, family gatherings became noticeably quieter around them. Relatives who had once accepted every story they told now questioned everything. Their reputation hadn't been ruined by Grandma. It had been undone by their own choices. I stopped calling to seek approval that was never coming. I stopped volunteering every time they demanded help. For the first time in my life, I understood that setting boundaries wasn't cruelty. It was self-respect. 6 months after the flood, Noah nailed the last small wooden birdhouse onto the maple tree beside our rebuilt porch. Lily planted flowers along the walkway with Grandma kneeling beside her, laughing as dirt covered both of their gardening gloves. Every Sunday, we drove out to the farmhouse for dinner. Not because we had to, because it had become the place where my children felt safest. Home, I learned, isn't always the house you inherit. Sometimes it's the people who refuse to leave you outside when the storm comes. The flood took my house, but it washed away every illusion I still had about who my real family was.